Hi, my name is Paul Arnold, sometimes known as a stuttering professor. I'm a strategic planner, facilitator, trainer, amongst other things. I've read a load of books, and today I want to just take you through 12 what I see must read books, because they are so important in the areas on which I work. So we're going to start looking at really marketing and strategy and like how brands grow. It absolutely blew the market apart. It's empirical evidence from the Ehrenberg Bass Institute in Australia. It's looking at what is the real evidence of what makes brands grow. And within here, the book really talks about penetration being the primary driver, about mental availability and physical availability. And I think it's become the Bible of many large organizations. They wrote a follow-up book, The Blue Ones. I think, you get everything you need out of this book. And I think there are some principles in there which you could debate, but I think overall it's still standing the test of time. Another book, Eating the Big Fish by Adam Morgan, is, written quite a few years ago now. I think he first started it when he was doing his MBA as his thesis, but fundamentally is about how do challenger brands compete against the large brands, and it's all about you need to do it differently. And he's got I think 10 credos in here, I can't remember exactly how many, about things you've got to go and do. And it's obviously about doing it your way, being clear what your authenticity is, and lighthousing that out, and having clear symbols of how you're different. This again, another book, The Lean Startup, really reshaped the innovation world, because beforehand you really went out to try to develop your product before, and then you put it out there and things failed. And this was very much the sort of minimal viable product idea, and very much about you can't fall in love with your ideas. You need to test and learn, and you've got to be sort of not relying upon what are called vanity metrics, but what is the real evidence to make real hard choice decisions, which you either sort of pivot or you pursue, and in fact you then scale. Right, that's up. Start with why. You've probably all seen the TED Talk, this idea about, particularly with younger generations coming to the workplace, they really want to understand the underlying purpose, the why, the mission, the higher need the organization is working to. So again, a classic. Likewise, another one, The Fearless Organization, which brought us all to understand this idea of psychological safety. We need a diverse workspace. We need to have clashing of ideas, and at the end of the day, if people are scared in the workspace to pipe up, then what's going to happen is, that diversity of thinking or that challenge doesn't come through. So a really important book. And almost, following on from that, even though it's written before, is this idea of the 5 dysfunctions of a team, which is basically built on the foundations of trust. If there is no trust, then everything starts to fall apart. And trust is often about the fearless organization, the place that you feel you can say what you need to go and say, and then everyone then feels, within the circle wanting to make it all work, versus when all trust is gone, you give up, you sit on the edges, you don't care. 2 other books that I think is really important in the business world is Think Again, a great book because it really talks about the art of influence, and decision making really needs to recognize the complexity and the diversity and the dynamic space we're working in. And I think it really does turn, how we influence upside down, and again I think was a great book. This may be slightly left of field, but I really think we all need to grasp the power of storytelling, because storytelling is the oldest method of transferring information and of influence. And of quite a few storybooks I've read, because this is what I did my dissertation, what I did my MBA on, is, you know, I thought this was a brilliant one, and you know, there are quite a lot of them out there, and I'm reviewing one right now. So that's another great book. Looking more upon your own personal development, you know, Mindset, you know, by Carol Dweck, the psychologist, is another classic. It talks about the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset, the belief that 10,000 hours, not that came from this, about how we really need to, you know, invest and put the time and the energy in and believe we can get better, rather than sitting back in a hopeless and helpless space of, well, I was never gifted with that talent, and really blows that out, says we've all can grow. Obliquity, another great book, because it's this idea there isn't a straight line in nature, and that all of our objectives and wants and desires in life are very rarely in one straight trajectory. We go back, we go swing, you know, exactly as it says, you know, the snakes and ladders of life. And actually, you know, we often have to go left to go right, you know, and so consequently, you know, it really helps to open up, you know, how we should be open to opportunities that may not seem the perfect one, but it's a bit like chess. You sometimes have to play a few moves to get to where you really want to go to. Another all-time classic, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You know, this is one of those books that I've read probably 5 times. You know, it's so easy to get into the fundamental concepts of this. And I find that, you know, the ideas stick with me, and I keep going back. I was just writing something this morning about, you know, the idea of seek first to understand before being understood. So another great book. And again, another really well thumbed book, you know, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. This is behavioral economics book into everyday life. It's a very heavy book, but, you know, as you can see, you know, really well marked out, because there's so many really interesting concepts in this book. And some of them are just like life lessons, like, you know, spend more time doing things you want to do and less time doing things you don't want to do is a recipe of happiness. So anyway, I hope that helps.